Welcome to 5 and 6, where we discuss all things life, spirit, mind, and the physical. In addition, we like to discuss things from a traditional East Asian medicine point of view. Um, that includes, but not limited to, medical mathematics as well as metaphysics. So we'd like to welcome you today and thank you for being with us. My name is Dr. Simel, and I'm a 20-year practitioner of traditional East Asian medicine, and I love what I do. And wanted to begin this series because we have some fantastic people in this profession that I thought deserve much fanfare, attention, and really want them to share their experiences of being in this profession, where it's going, where it's been, and the innovation ahead of us. Today, I have a very special guest. She's a colleague, she's a friend. I've known her for many years. We went to school together, and we're really on these parallel paths of getting to know particular techniques, and at the same time, different techniques. And so, wanted to invite and welcome Dr. Rhonda Coleman today.
Thank you.
All of the fanfares going on right now.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So Rhonda, we've known each other for a little while, and we're having a conversation today in regards to traditional East Asian medicine. Some know it as traditional Chinese medicine. Some know it as classical Chinese medicine. It goes by many names, but there's a term that's called Black acupuncturist. And what a loaded word, right? So acupuncture itself is not, well, now it is. It's in the lexicon of the consciousness worldwide and in America. But Black acupuncture, it's like, whoa, it's like, what is that? I wanted to just start off by asking you to break that down in a historical context, how that represents who you are and where you are, and also where do you see that going?
Yeah. So, I mean, the simplest breakdown is that I'm a Black person practicing acupuncture. And like many things that seems to be a phenomenon for some people, they get intrigued or they're excited or they're surprised by this idea that I would be in this practice. And I think that the root of it comes down to the fact that in the United States, at least, but in colonized countries to the West, especially, um, the idea of what Black people should be doing, the idea that it's placed out publicly through media and through storytelling, not our own storytelling, but the storytelling from others, has a very uh, it's a very tight box. So the expectation of where Black people should be and what they should be doing is very small. And so anytime we're outside of that, then it's this huge ordeal, you know? Oh, you're educated. Wow, you have this amazing business that's not dealing with what I expect you to be dealing with, right? So that's at the base of it, that um, being an acupuncturist as a Black person puts you outside of the box that society on the Western Hemisphere, at least I'll speak from where I've lived and where I know. It's just, it's not what is expected, and you're not where you're expected to be. It's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's my spirit tells me that being an acupuncturist is reconnecting with a birthright that is passed down, even if it's not documented anywhere, even if it's not recent. It definitely feels very familiar to me. All of the philosophy, everything that I have learned, has felt very familiar to me and not like something foreign and not like something that is new.
Mhm, mhm. And so many may not know that there's a historical context that we're also using the term. Um, would you like to elaborate on some of that historical uh, precedent, 60s and 70s,
Mhm,
and what was happening at
mhm.
that time, which somewhat feels somewhat similar now?
Yes.
But if you would,
Yes, and I didn't want to start with that
yeah.
because that's so new. Like that's still within, the past, what, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And so I started with that root of it going beyond that because that takes us beyond the United States documented history of Black acupuncturists, and I believe it was the late 60s, early 70s, right? And so that piece of history is tied to civil rights movements, Black Power movements, especially coming from the East Coast. So we're talking Bronx, New York. We're talking the Lincoln Hospital Project and opioid, specifically heroin at the time in the community, people coming back from Vietnam strung out. I don't think that term is used anymore, but definitely people trying to cope and self-medicate using heroin. Um, in the late 60s, early 70s, and communities stepping in because there was no counting on government to look out for us. There was no counting on privately funding organizations to put our needs first, right? So community stepped in and said, we need to resolve this issue. This is a problem that is plaguing our community. And so the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party both were extremely front facing and very vocal about improving situations in the Bronx. There was a project happening at Lincoln Hospital, a detox program that was using methadone to try and help people get over the necessity for heroin, but it was essentially trading one addiction for another. Let's supply them with this one that we can control, so they're not dying on the streets with this street grade heroin. And so the Lincoln Hospital was um, working this detox program where they were using methadone to try and help people get off of heroin. And the Young Lords had kind of stepped in at one point and they were taking over the hospital, demanding, better treatment, better care. There were rats infested in this place. There were a number of problems. But as far as the acupuncture goes, this was the work of Dr. Matulu Shakur. He had read an article about a doctor in China who was successfully treating opioid uh, addiction with acupuncture. And so they began studying and looking into this and then brought a program of acupuncture into that Lincoln detox program that was already happening. And so eventually there was a move from the methadone to just this acupuncture, which evolved later to the NADA protocol that we know today. It all started with this detox program. And so, yeah, it started there. That was 1972, I believe, that they implemented the acupuncture program at Lincoln Detox instead of the methadone. And from there, Dr. Shakur also established a school where he and others were teaching community members acupuncture, and not just the ear acupuncture at that point. They were doing a full on, let's teach you how to do acupuncture. And so some of the first acupuncturists that were non-Chinese in this country were Black people being treated by community. It was for community in New York in the 70s.
Amazing. And so people hear Shakur, the name Shakur, and they may think of someone.
Yeah.
Who do you think they think of?
Tupac, we all know Tupac. Yeah.
There's actually photos of him sitting on Matula Shakur's lap, which we'll
Yeah,
share
his
in this.
stepfather.
And it's super important to know that that is a part of this history, of course, which can't be swept under the rug. I want to circle back though too, because I want to know about your journey.
Mhm.
What brought you to become an acupuncturist? Was it in the woods one day and said, "I'm going to be an acupuncturist"? Practicing on your dolls, sticking pins in them. What was it? How did that journey happen? And tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. I'm actually working on a book
Amazing.
to tell this story.
What's the name of it? Can you give the name of it?
I have a name in progress, but I don't
Okay.
know that it would be the final name. And because I don't have anything, documented yet, as far as protected yet, I don't want to say it and,
But we
get
do want our supporters to support Dr. Rhonda Coleman. So you heard it here first. Okay.
Yes, yes. So I'm working on the book. I have a title in mind. And my editor may or may not want me to change it, but I think she doesn't yet get where it fits in. But essentially, I started in holistic health and body work pretty early on. So I was in the Air Force and very into fitness and exercise. And so after I left the military, I was a personal trainer. So that was like how I got my foot in the door on the health and wellness side. And then 2005, I went into massage therapy school. And so that's where I got my foundation in Eastern philosophies, in holistic health and body work, in diet and nutrition, all of those things that people don't realize you get that kind of training for massage. They think, oh, laborer, low end, but there's a lot of education that goes into massage therapy school, especially if you're a person that likes to study beyond what's put before you, which I am. So my path started as a massage therapist. I was licensed back in 2006. I did that for several years and was quite good. People have used the term natural healer for me for many years. I
Mhm.
hear that a lot, like your hands are blessed. You're a natural healer. I can feel that you're a healer. I don't let those kinds of things get to my head, but I do accept people's feedback when they suggest you should study more, you should get more, you should continue in this direction. And so I had enough elders tell me that I should continue in that direction, that I continued studying over time. I would constantly pick up books. I decided at some point that I needed to go into school for dietary nutrition because I was offering a lot of nutritional advice because of my own journeys with diet. And people were finding success with my suggestions. So I went into a program for dietary nutritionists. I ended up taking a class that was called something like Survey of Complementary and Alternative Medicine, and read about chiropractic. I was interested in chiropractic school, but found none in an area that I would want to live. I was at home in New Orleans at this time, and there were no schools anywhere in Louisiana dealing with
Louisiana,
alternative
really? Oh,
health.
wow.
Right. So I didn't want to go to Texas or Florida or the places that had chiropractic schools. I was also interested in naturopathic medicine, which has some similarities to chiropractic, but leaning a little more to the TCM side as far as like philosophies and and the way that they approach health. And then I read about traditional Chinese medicine. So I saw that there was a school in Colorado. My current husband was in Colorado. We were trying to figure out where we were going to be. And so it was decided that I would go to acupuncture school in Denver, Colorado. So that's where I began at Colorado School of Traditional Chinese Medicine.
Amazing. When we're talking about traditional East Asian medicine, we're using that as a type of branding mechanism for a new era. But essentially, we're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, TCM, classical Chinese medicine, that type of thing. Um, in your work, this journey at this juncture, what is really showing up for you? What changes are you seeing in your journey?
I am seeing, and I have been seeing for a very long time, that I
Mhm.
am pushed towards mental health, towards emotional and mental health. I'm also pushed towards um, education. And when I say push towards, I'm speaking of, Some people may call it gut feeling. Some people may call it what's the other term I've heard recently? Like
Uh, yeah,
second
instinct.
voice or a
Mhm.
whisper.
Yeah.
But the ancestors ultimately, some people may say angels, whatever language you use. My ancestors have been pushing me in this direction for a long time, in the form of people coming to me and needing me and support in these ways, and just that no matter what I'm doing, it seems to lend towards mental health and emotional side. And so what I'm seeing personally is, one, on the physical side, that so many people are recognizing limitations in what our current conventional medicine is, the go-to medicine is. People are finding limitations in that, not just on the patient side, but even on the provider side. People are recognizing limitations and recognizing the benefits and uses of the efficacy, right, of our medicine, of TCM, classical Chinese medicine, East Asian medicine, all those terms, whatever that is, people are recognizing the benefits of it. But I believe that people are also recognizing that the chemistry that happens with stress, with all of those different emotions coming to a head, that so many people have PTSD. They're recognizing that all of these things are contributing to the physical health, and that's not new to us. That just makes sense to us. But the connections are being made, and so people are starting to be more proactive in seeking support, in recognizing that they need to not only be mindful about their self-care, not only need to take in breaths and take time for rest, but that they need support in doing that. They need um, to seek guidance in how
Yes.
to make that happen.
And I think they're doing a little bit of work here. We'll edit this out somehow.
I don't hear it on my side.
You don't hear it on your side. Okay. So if you hear anything in the background, let me know, Adia, if because we can edit it and whatnot. Hopefully, I'm not going to talk over her, so we could keep that peace.
Mhm.
Um, do you hear anything, Adia? No? They're spraying something? No? Okay, cool. Um, so one of the things that I wanted to bring up was it was pretty awesome. My wife was telling me that she was reading the new Cecily Tyson book, right?
Mhm.
And so there was a point where Miles Davis, of course, was, as you said, strung out on heroin and a whole bunch of other stuff. And, very messy love affair, right? Just, yeah. But he goes to her, Cecily Tyson, and she, in order to help him, takes him to a Chinese medicine practitioner. I never knew that.
Wow.
And that's how, on his second angle, he began to clean up.
Mm.
And so, just you mentioned ancestors, right? You mentioned instinct, intuition. Talk about how important that is in life,
Mhm.
but especially in the practice of medicine.
Mhm. Yeah, so whatever training, whatever formal training that people get, especially in our society where everything is so structured and academic, there is no way to cover everything, right? Because every body is so different.
Yes.
And where you live impacts what happens with you. The environment impacts what's happening with you. Your internal environment, how you're feeling within yourself, your home environment, how you structure family around you and how you interact there, where you're working, the temperature outside, all of those things impact each body and each individual. I talk about plants a lot, even though I'm not a botanist by any means. I recognize that plants grow differently in different places. I've always had plants around me. I love having plants, a flower, a tulip, let's say a tulip, is going to grow differently if I put it in a pot outside here in Tucson, where I am now, versus if I have a tulip and I live in Hawaii, right? it's the same plant, but it's going to behave differently. It's going to need different things depending on the environment that it's in. And so when you think about receiving education, specifically in medicine and how you're treating people, the textbook is not going to tell you how to deal with a person where they are.
Mm.
You have to know how to apply the academics of what you've learned to the real life setting that you're in.
Mhm.
I can't treat someone that has been through trauma. Let's say it's a woman who's been through trauma, who that trauma was applied by her mother, let's say, right? And she's dealing with the emotions of that. She's presenting fine, she's smiling, she's happy. I can't have her on the table and talk to her and treat her in the same way as I would treat, let's say, a man who has had no trauma, maybe had a great upbringing, loving, great parents, no experience of harm at all, very confident in himself, coming in like the way that I speak to them, it's going to be different. The language that I use is different, right? So there's so many things to consider before you even get to the treatment itself. And so I have to use intuition, I have to use experience, and I have to listen for cues from the person, as well as whatever comes to me from spirit, from ancestors, from my gut, about what this person needs. They're going to tell me to an extent. Some of it will be verbal, some of it will be through body language, and then some of it has to come from me and
Mhm.
from whatever guidance I'm receiving.
I'm so glad that you elaborated on that because forever who's watching this, this is fundamental in developing really just as a human being, right? Because you can't turn this off. This is always happening. We have four main um, aspects to the inquiry process. We're taught this from day one. They are observation, palpation, listening, and of course, smell, olfactory system. And by applying those, the more we practice, we begin to realize, oh, there's levels to this.
Mhm.
And that essentially is where I think the intuition and the instinct are allowed to be, which
Mhm.
is one of the beauties of this medicine uh, that I hold dear.
Yeah.
Um,
That
so, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say that that goes back to the academic piece though, because if you're reading, I observe and I smell, and you're thinking only observing, oh, I'm looking at the color, and you can't grow beyond the academic piece of that. You don't understand that it goes deeper than that. Then you're going to see a difference between practitioner and patient,
That's
right?
right. That's right. I mean, it's amazing. Something so simple, so elegant, yet so powerful, and they really see results. Um, you know, you mentioned that you move, well, that you in Colorado, but you moved to Arizona. Tell me what that move was about. What's going on with that?
From a TCM's perspective, I mean, I think it's all that,
Professional journey, all of it.
right? All of it. So I'm strongly guided by spirit. I really am. Um, from when I arrived in Colorado, I knew that was not my place, but that's where my heart is, and not my physical heart, not my, this idyllic heart, but my husband is there.
Keith
He's,
Randall, tell him I
yes,
said hello.
yes, yes. He's currently still there for the next year. He's there while I'm in Colorado. He'll be coming here in a year.
Awesome.
Um, and so I was in Colorado because of him. And I moved there from New Orleans because while I love my city, I love where I grew up, it's not a place that I can grow anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot I could pour into New Orleans, and there's a lot of people that would love me to be there to help tend to our, garden, so to speak there. But it's not a place that I can be right now. So I went to Colorado, school, completed school there. That was good. But beyond that, I just never felt that I was in my place,
Mhm.
if you know what that means. And for anyone watching that doesn't know what that means, I just, as much as I cultivated community there and I made great connections, met some amazing people, I never quite felt like I was in, like I was with my people. I was with people that I care deeply about. Um, but it was like I was a visitor there. Like that was just,
Mm,
it was never home there.
mhm, mhm.
I had lived in Tucson in the past, and
Yeah.
I was able to make a connection to Tucson. I was in Colorado almost 10 years, and that's about how long I had lived in Tucson before. And it didn't take long for me to feel like I had a place in Tucson. And
Mhm.
I never felt that um, outside of my home
Yes.
in Colorado. So that's one piece of it, and that is business related. Despite how I described it, that was related to me in a business sense.
Mhm, mhm.
On a personal side, it's just too cold for too long, and I have a strong aversion to cold. And I'm sure I need to work on that. I need to work on building up some yang and getting some heat in. But
Yeah.
there wasn't enough ginger in the world. There was not
Right.
enough
Yeah. Yeah.
broke way in the world um, for me to warm up to Colorado's weather. It's cold in October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and May. And
Mhm.
it can snow in any of those months that I just mentioned. And that's just too much white powder for me. Um, I'm not a fan. I'm an island girl by genetics. My family hails from Honduras, and part of my genetic ancestry, as I researched into that, comes from Equatorial Guinea, from Bioko Island,
Mhm.
and it's just in my DNA to be in a nice, hot, humid, or warm environment, and I could not get that in Colorado. Um,
Well, you'll definitely get it in Arizona, that's for
oh
sure.
yeah, and, I mean, right now I'm in my house. I think the thermostat says it's about 81 degrees in here, and my AC is not on.
Awesome. Saving some money there.
Yes.
Well, I understand that as far as you have a logo as well, a dandelion logo that's your current logo. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about why you chose that and what it means.
Yeah. So then we're encroaching a little bit into the book area again.
Okay, okay.
But I've always loved dandelions, and I think that so many people, especially as children, you pick
Mhm. Yeah.
the mature dandelion, you do it, seeds go everywhere. And I think that so my business name is Black Acupuncturist, back to the title of, or the initial conversation about being a
Yeah.
Black acupuncturist. Black acupuncturist is something that, came when I started school. They were like, "Oh, you're a Black acupuncturist. How is that? You're a Black acupuncturist." And I was like, "I like that. Yeah." Um, and
Because originally it was Water Mama.
So Water Mama was the name of my business.
Right.
And Black Acupuncturist is this name like I used across my social media. And,
Yeah.
it was kind of this familial, oh, our local Black acupuncturist around Colorado. And in my family, people were kind of using that. So that was always on the social media side. My handle was Black Acupuncturist.
Okay.
Water Mama I was using as this idea. It was a concept of bringing the spiritual back into practice, and it was in homage to water, Mami Wata, or Yemaja, or Yemoja, depending on where you're from. And so I left Mami Wata in Colorado, because I felt like there was a lot of struggle with trying to get business off the ground there. And so I didn't want to carry that struggle with me. So I left that behind and I'm carrying forward just Black acupuncturist.
So
Um,
talk about that real quick, because you mentioned it a little bit before. Is it possible to devoid one's nature from one's practice?
mm,
And that is if one is more, not to relegate this to race or type of thing, because it also is seen in, again, being in Colorado, not feeling as though it's this, and then going to Arizona. Do you think it's possible for one to just shut that off and be successful, love what they do, have a happy life?
mhm.
Or, as we know through the nature of change, something's going to knock on your door and say, hey. Mhm.
I think if you're able to be honest with yourself and you're able to recognize what the issue is, then yes. And
Mhm.
so part of my issue was that because I felt not connected to Colorado, I was unable to grow.
Mhm.
And the way that I would describe it to people was when you're trying to grow, especially a business, you're essentially planting a seed.
Mhm.
So how can I plant a seed and expect it to flourish and grow if I don't want to be rooted in the place that I'm planting the seed? You know what I mean? I knew that I didn't want to be permanently in Colorado. I didn't want to stay in Colorado. I had no intention of staying in Colorado. Yet I'm trying to plant this seed of growing a business,
Mhm.
right? So it's not so much trying to step away from something that didn't work as it is to accept this is not my place, and my efforts are futile because I know that I'm not going to be here to tend this plant.
Mhm.
So I'm fighting against myself and my spirit in doing all of the actions that demonstrate wanting to grow something, but in myself knowing that I really don't. Does that make sense?
And I'm so glad, because this is information for anyone who's watching this to really listen to, and that is there needs to be a cohesion, there needs to be a vibrational alignment
Mhm,
with person, place, and theme, and I think that that's what you're speaking to,
mhm,
and listening to the spirit, right, and being able to not block it, the intuition, whether it's treating a patient that's different from the previous one, but there might be a pattern, but they're different,
mhm.
and so just allowing that to flow. And that's why I was really getting into, for some folks who don't listen, how that shows up for them. So I just want everyone to just hear that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And so back to the dandelion.
Yeah.
Um, when I think about, and I don't know if you follow any of the, um, sorry, I'm gonna wait till the refrigerator noise stops.
That's okay.
Hopefully we can edit that part out, my mama moments.
I'm sure we can. Hey, it's real life.
Yes. So I don't know if you follow any
Mhm.
of the acupuncture social media pages, but I've been on a couple of different forums where these discussions around
Uh-huh.
exclusion of acupuncturists in the medical world come up.
Yes.
And my comments are going to continuously be, for anyone looking at this, I'm always going to bring it back to, yes, this is what selective appropriation looks like. When you think about acupuncture in the medical world, it's much like appropriation anywhere else. Like, oh yeah, we accept this piece of this Chinese medicine practice, the acupuncture piece specifically for this, but we don't accept the philosophy that it comes from. We don't accept the people and their culture that it comes from. We just like this one part,
Mhm.
right? And so then I will talk about how that is very in line with what Black people have been expressing over years. Our music Our music is acceptable, our dances, like all our foods, all of these little pieces of who we are picked out and appreciated, leaving behind the people and the entirety of the culture that it comes from. We like these pieces, we want to accept this and incorporate this into what is American culture, but you're still African American, you know?
Right.
Your food is American food. You know, your
Yeah.
jazz music is American music. Your dance style, that's all American, while you remain African American. You know,
I
you
think
remain
there was a term. It's like you say you like black music, but you don't like black people, or
right.
you know, and we see that internalized in many different areas of our history, right? And then they throw or whoever that is, a particular biochemical element, water, foods, you name it. And I mean, what would you get from such a mixture over time and people trying to get out of a situation which is naturally human? They're going to infight, right? And so I think that you were mentioning this. I remember you sharing this, from day one when we met, and I always appreciated your insight because I know I felt it. And in those layers, right, sitting on this side, or the term we were laughing about in the day, which was like, oh, they're a magical Negro, just look at me, I'm healed. It's like, well, wait a minute, what's your name? Maybe, and so yeah, the things we got to deal with at times, which are different, I think, on top of this selective appropriation.
Mm-hmm. And so when I think about like that selective acceptance, right, um, of Black people or bits of it, somehow to me the dandelion can be representative of that. So here's this amazing plant, over thousands and thousands of years of documented human history across multiple different nationalities, ethnic groups, cultures. There is this acceptance that this plant is amazing, that it is medicinal, that it is food, that it is beautiful, and yet we still have it documented as a weed.
Mm,
You know, it's a weed, it's this thing to eradicate, it's this thing that's problematic, except in these small instances when it's necessary, when it's needed, when
mm.
it can be of help. Um, the seeds go far and wide, as do the people of the African diaspora,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And so it's little things like that that I've just over time I keep making these other connections between who I see myself as a Black acupuncturist and this amazing plant,
Mm.
right? This pugong, this puff flower. Um, yeah, so that's why the dandelion. That's why I adopted it as my logo,
Mhm.
and that's also ties into the story of me identifying my business as the same as how I've been identifying myself as a Black acupuncturist.
I think it's exceptionally exquisite, and you know this comes through the practice, right? The practice of through experience, the human experience. I think to be involved in a medicine which is more than a medicine has been a revelation to me over the last y- you know 10 years, which is okay. Yes, I you read about these mystical wondrous things, yet to be in a space vibrationally and to see it occur is a whole different experience. And so um, uh, tell me, in regards to the future of the profession, where do you see things going in regards to your role, but also as a collective conscious uh, journey?
Um, I see a lot of potential for growth. You know, um, we have this global growth happening right now,
Yes.
especially across the African diaspora. Black folks in the islands, throughout Central and South America, as well as the United States and Europe, those living as expats in other countries like Australia and throughout different parts of Asia, are all having this same growth and movement alongside the societies that we're living in, where people are realizing, well, maybe there are some systemic issues going on, and they are not solely isolated to the United States, but they exist in all of these colonized places around the globe. And maybe we do need to look at how we speak to people, how we welcome people, how we include people. These dialogues are happening everywhere, and so they are also happening within our profession. I have personally been sought after in different groups to speak up, to share my insight and experience. And I have other friends, I'm sure you have as well, that have been sought after for the same reasons.
Yes.
And I think that it feels like we're all connected to it because our group in the United States, especially as Black acupuncturists, is so small.
So small.
It's so small. There are not very many of us. And so those of us that are willing to speak up are being sought after to speak up in more places.
Some of the recent statistics, or at least in the last couple of years, I remember reading, was that, we comprise of the profession, at least in America, out of, I think it's around 25,000 total, could be a little bit more now. We're less than 0.3%.
Hmm. That's about what I've been seeing as well.
Yeah.
So very small number of us. There's all of this equity work, diversity, inclusion work being done.
Yes. Yes.
And so there's a lot of change in language. There's also a smaller conversation that's happening
Hmm.
around including our history. And so with the NADA as an organization, there's a lot of work with them to bring back in the history that has been excluded
Yes.
over these years. And there is a recognition and an honoring of the fact that it was removed for political reasons.
Yes.
Definitely in the 80s and 90s, no one wanted to have any affiliation with those that have been termed domestic terrorists, which they were not, right? So the fact that Dr. Mutulu Shakur had an affiliation with the Black Panthers, and then the work that he did beyond that, caused that organization to hide his name
Hmm.
as the seed that started this work with community acupuncture. When people think
Yes.
about community acupuncture, I think maybe POCA might have a little bit more dialogue about the roots of it, but outside of that, most people had no idea and still don't have an idea. It's starting to come up in conversations, but a lot of acupuncturists still have no idea that group acupuncture and community acupuncture in this country was grassroots work done by uh, a social party that is now considered a domestic terrorist group. And that's the last time I'm going to say that. I just want people to recognize that that's how they are
Yes.
identified. And it's only because they were a threat to what our government would feel is a group that is able to be controlled and monitored and kept in a certain line, right?
Hmm.
But they were activists and they were supporters of community, and they are who should be thanked for having a presence of community and group acupuncture in this country, and for having the start of acupuncture schools come back in this country, because they were wiped out with the Flexner report. So
Yes. And so, I think that, thank you for sharing that. It makes sense. I think uh, different strains, different schools, as they were starting to be associated with that when they didn't have to be. Sure, they chose that route just to get it legislated in their respective states, and
mhm.
to begin the pedagogy of acupuncture in America in a more legitimate way. So that makes sense. However, I think it's awesome, Nada, putting that back in. If that's the case, that'd be amazing, because that needs to be told. Of course, there are a few I saw a recent documentary. The name escapes me right now, but that really shed light on that history.
Was,
And I'm sorry.
was it the Dope is Death
I think
documentary?
it is. That's it. Yeah, that is it. Yeah, my wife and I saw. Even my 20-year-old, 19-year-old at the time, she also saw it with us as well, and just had no idea, And so, and everything that's being seeking, these polarities, extremes now, right? Division and so on. Um, um, you know, Teach this, don't teach this. Oh, because it may show this, it may show our bad side. You know, that does not um, cause growth. That causes de-evolution and a type of just diminishment in consciousness. And so we're not about that, right? We're about sharing the truth or sharing seeds that grow with those individuals who allow themselves through intuition, through instinct, however they can, in either working with this medicine, just being a human being to
Mhm.
develop along lines of conscious expansion. Well, as we wind it down, I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that this takes work. And for all of those who have been working very hard, we thank you and what you've been doing in the profession. We want to raise the value of the profession. Um, but Rhonda, I'd like to ask you a little bit more on that innovative side, what you would like to see in the profession. You mentioned about what's happening, but what would you like to see as well as we get ready to close out?
Yeah, I would love to see our medicine incorporated more into the plans for patient care. And I feel like we are moving in that direction. I would like to see a continued strong growth in the direction of inclusion of East Asian, uh, what was it, classical Chinese, traditional Chinese, all those terms. I would like to see continuation of growth towards inclusion of those practices as far as what is offered for people, what is available through their insurance, however they are able to access healthcare. I would love to see more inclusion in of our medicine in that because it is so powerful and it is so helpful. I would love to see continued growth in our people, in the Black people in this country, seeking out this medicine because it is something that, as far as using herbs as healing, using manual therapies as healing, using these more ancient approaches to self care are all part of our birthright. And so I would love to see a continual growth in Black people accessing this medicine because, especially because we are some of the most at risk when it comes to preventable diseases, when it comes to dietary issues that result in poor health and ultimately death. And so I hope to see more of that, as well as more of a norm in our people going into these types of professions and practices, these types being what are considered alternative practices or complementary practices or whatever language they're using today
Mhm.
for the ancient medicine practices.
Yes. Fantastic. You really shared some seeds, powerful seeds of wisdom, of truth, that we trust our audience will accept wherever you are on the path and allow it to uh, cultivate, or you should consider cultivating these seeds in your own life if you haven't already. And so we really appreciate everyone who has been watching. We appreciate, of course, someone very dear and near to you that's transitioning with us right now, Adia. Been amazing. We thank you for her. And we like to thank you, Rhonda, for all that you're doing in the world, in life, in this profession. And so I just wanted to say, please give them, the audience, your social media handles, how they can contact you if they need to, and so on, support you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll definitely share. First, I would like to thank you for having me on this platform. I appreciate it. And I want to acknowledge all of the work that you've been doing. I would not know what I know about Dr. Matul Shakur without the conversations that we have had, that you and I have had. I know you've reached out to him in the past and had dialogue with him through writing. I appreciate that. The Dope is Death um, documentary, I think, got a lot of information from. They consulted with a good friend of mine, Tanisha Dandridge, and I know that she's also had conversations with you as well. Shout out
Yes,
to Tanisha,
that's
and also Claudia Voiles, Dr. Claudia Voiles, another good friend of
yeah.
ours who's also done a lot of work in that area. So you know, I see you, Dr. Bay. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, always quietly behind the scenes, but you're out there and you're a king in it. So I appreciate you.
Well,
Thank you for
that's
that.
very kind of you.
As far as finding me, you can find me across any social media at Blackupuncturist. So that's the at sign. Blackupuncturist is acupuncturist with BL in front. So BLACUPUNCTURIST at Blackupuncturist. And my website address is www.blackupuncturist.me, and I intend to keep that for the remainder of my career. So even if I'm traveling the world or, you know,
Awesome.
decide to go back to New Orleans at some time, I don't see that happening. But people can always find me at blackupuncturist.me or follow me at blackupuncturist.
Amazing. Again, this is Dr. Bay with our special guest, Dr. Rhonda Coleman, on 5 and 6. We thank everyone who has been supporting and watching, and stay tuned for more content. And thank you again.